It's 2023, and the video editor that I have been using for the past 7 or 8 years at this point is getting rather long in the tooth. This is Serif MoviePlus X5, and it has been my one and only video editor. Quite regrettably, the software is EOL and pretty much abandonware at this point. Serif is no longer selling or supporting their Plus range of software. So that goes for MoviePlus, PhotoPlus, DrawPlus, and all the other Plus programs that they used to have available. Enter CapCut. This is a free video editor, and it's my understanding that only recently have they actually released a version for Windows. Now, if we take a look at the terms and conditions, we can see that it's actually software that is created by the company behind TikTok, ByteDance, and as such, with this being from the likes of TikTok, you see that that's the first thing it advertises is stickers, filters, text, and trending music. It says you could do intro videos, how-to videos, but I wanted to actually give this a go, and I actually went ahead and edited a full-length YouTube video of mine quite recently with it, running CapCut version 1.3.2, and this is going to be more so an honest review than anything else. If you learn a couple things, well, that's a benefit, but it's not the intention of this video to be a walkthrough tutorial. You can import video, audio, and pictures into this media pane here. I do quite like the way it says added. It tells you and gives you indication of what files are actually a part of your timeline, so you're not left guessing. You can change the sorting order. You can sort just by videos, or filter rather by video, audio, or images, and you could change this to a list view where it's almost like what you would get in iMovie or a grid style display. You could go to audio, and this actually will extract audio from a video if you happen to import it. If I take this video now and I open this up, it will actually extract the audio, and then you can drag that onto your timeline, and you just get a waveform, and it's just a pure audio file that you could work with. Likewise, you could go to media, you just take your video, drag it in wherever, and then you could right-click to separate audio, delete the video, and now you have the audio pretty much accomplishing the exact same thing, just in a different fashion. And then, because this is from TikTok, you could do import, you could do trending sounds and all kinds of music that's copyrighted and going to get you into problems on YouTube. There's also sound effects, so this reminds me of like what you would find in older versions of iMovie, where they would come with sound effects and music built in. You do text, there's default text, which is just going to give you very basic overlay text that you could then come back and modify by going over here, clicking all these presets. There's also a bunch of different presets for text. There's text templates, these little download icons here. That just means that the asset's available for use. It's no charge, but they have to download before you can actually use them. So just by hovering over them, it'll queue up a download, and then you could drag that into your timeline and start using it. Also do something called auto captions. This is pretty much like what YouTube has already, where it'll actually decipher what it is you're saying and convert that to a caption, a bunch of captions, so you don't have to subtitle and caption the videos yourself. And this has actually worked very well. It doesn't take that long based on my limited testing. And apparently you could do old school import of caption files as well. There's stickers here, so you could do what pretty much every YouTuber does these days and just drag these sticker elements in, place them wherever you want. We're going to get over to here in just a couple of minutes, but you can also keyframe these things by clicking this button, advancing forward, moving that a little bit more, moving a little more, and now if we play that back, you can see that we'll get a little animated icon in there, and there's plenty to choose from. Now, there's no shortage of effects to choose from for both the video and the person's body, if that's what you're looking to do. These can be applied just by dragging and dropping. Get these effects here that'll run for the length of the video, and if you select this little blue strip here, you can actually adjust the length of that effect for that individual video clip, which is something I learned about by chance. You can also drag an effect over into the timeline, and it'll actually apply it as a sort of adjustment layer, like what you would get in Adobe After Effects. You could drag this to run the length of your project or for a number of different clips. There's also body effects, which I have no need for this because none of my videos feature a person in them. But if you are looking to do different things that you see on TikTok and YouTube Shorts, you have plenty of that to choose from. And then we transition over to transitions. And there's a number of these to choose from, actually a rather large selection, and a number of these will probably look familiar to anybody who's seen a YouTube short, and you could just choose any of these. You just hover over it and it'll give you a preview. You could just drag this in. You could also adjust the length of the transition very easily by just dragging and dropping, or coming over here and adjusting it in seconds. We also have filters over here, which is a little different from effects. These are like color-graded Instagram-style picture filters that you could just drag on top of your video, change different things about it. We could do this one, and likewise, if we wanted to, we could also just drag it over here and then move this thing however we want to cover the however many videos that we actually have, or the entire project even. Over here, there's adjustments, and if you do custom adjustment and click that little plus sign or just drag it into the timeline, it accomplishes the same thing. This will actually get you an adjustment layer, like what you would get in Adobe After Effects, or I think even Adobe Premiere, although I'm unfamiliar with that program. And we could do brightness and contrast adjustments. We can sharpen the image. We can do a fade effect to make it look like it's faded out old film or something like that. Even do vignettes. And again, that will last for just as long as the clip or the adjustment layer lasts for. And you can, of course, move that around and extend it as you see fit. All right, so here's a video now, and there's a couple of different settings over here on the right. If you click the video, quite a few different options to choose from, starting out under the video tab and then the basic sub tab. We have different options for adjusting the position and the size. We could blend. This is if you have like an overlay, so if you have another video on top of this one, and let's say you want to overlay it with some opacity, you can do that as well. Do different settings like you get in Photoshop and other editors, like brightness, overlay, hard light, all different ways to overlay the clips, and that applies for pictures as well. You could do stabilization. Then over here, you can also do chroma key, which is for green screens and blue screens, which that's not going to work because I don't have anything like that in the video. There's also auto cutout, which will, it's supposed to only work with portraits, I'm assuming, of people and not objects, but it should, in theory, automatically cut out the object that's in the foreground. There's some mask effects here. You do split screen and use this for different effects. Like, for example, what I've found myself doing is, let's say I have a video now like this one, and for whatever reason there's something there in the background that I want to blur out. You make a copy, so you'll just right-click and do a copy and paste command. And now that you have the duplicate video, what you could do is go up to Effects, over here to Video Effects, scroll down to where Blur is, drag that onto the overlay clip, adjust how strong it is, and then if we click outside of it, away from the effect but onto the actual clip, a little confusing, you can select where you want that effect to be, mask it off. Let's say I want to blur out these orange capacitors for some reason. Well, what's going to happen if the video moves? Well, that is going to be static. Well, that's where keyframes come in, which is really a nice thing about this program, and something that I wasn't expecting to see at all, is I could keyframe that, move forward a little bit in the timeline, move that again, again, and just keep going through this process. And now if I go to play the video,
engineering went into this thing
it'll
just to make
actually
it
track with the item. Of course, there is motion tracking, so if I were to go and skip ahead right here to tracking and do motion tracking, it should, in theory, allow us to select a point and do motion tracking and run through that, and then the object that's overlaid over top it will reference that tracking, but it hasn't worked all too well in my experience. Then there's a couple of different settings here for enhancing a video, primarily intended for videos, again, with people in them. You can do face adjustments like smoothing skin, brightening skin, and a bunch of other things that are not popping up right now because there's no person in the video. And the way it's grayed out right now seems to imply to me that perhaps it's using some kind of an AI system to detect whether or not there's a person in here, because now I'm not getting any of these options like for makeup adjustments, body, and facial beauty. But again, that's a moot point because I don't have any intentions of doing that or using that. Clicking audio, you get some controls here for volume, fading in, fading out. You can keyframe everything. Also do noise reduction, and in my testing it's actually worked relatively well and doesn't leave the audio sounding very mushy, for lack of a better word, like poor noise reduction usually does. And there's also some cheesy voice effects like echo and chipmunk. With you could do different things like that. You can also adjust the speed of clips by clicking speed, and you could adjust this to either speed up the video or slow it down, or you can also just go by duration to extend or shorten the video. And you could also enable voice tone change, which will try to maintain the pitch within a certain amount of speed up or down difference. And you could also do speed ramps, and then you can adjust the speed and do all this fancy stuff. Now this video is going to be, the speed's going to be all over the place. It's going to fast forward, it's going to slow up. You can very easily do speed ramps, ignoring that we are currently under text properties now and not video properties, but it's pretty much the same thing. There's a number of these different animation presets that can be used, and you could drag this onto the video like I have in here. And I just did a simple fade in, but you can do any of these advanced features. Now, if I have a video selected, I could go up here where it says animation and choose either an in animation, an out animation, or a combination, which is like a motion thing if you want text or different objects to have different kinds of motion as they're on screen. So I will just do swing from bottom. You can see this arrow applies, and now we have an animated intro to this video, and it's not the smoothest thing in the world because this computer is rather disadvantaged in terms of performance. Only thing I've noticed, though, is that you can add both a fade-in and a fade-out animation to the same clip. If I go to fade-out, let's say I want to add a fade-out effect, see the arrow disappeared from the front, and now it's only showing up here on the back end of the clip. So to get around that, I've found that I have to do Command-B, or Control-B, rather, cut that video into half. You can do your fade into the first half of the clip, and then to the second half of the clip. And it's that way that you can get animated intros and outros. There's also adjustments for lookup tables again for color grading and color adjustments, which we discussed earlier. Now here we are on text, and you get a couple different options for the spacing, position, and size, the opacity. But moving down here, we have some options for the stroke, the background, the shadow. We could do drop shadows. Likewise, we could add text bubbles. We're looking for that kind of look. And there's different effects and presets to choose from for the text. If you go over to text-to-speech, you can actually do like what the TikTok videos do, and it'll actually read out your text on screen.
And the this is 34, and this is 30 for D.
Yep, just like what you can see on TikTok and YouTube Shorts, you too can do with this editor. Here I have a 4x3 video that's currently in a 16:9 project, and you get these typical black bars on the left and right, which you might be fine with. But if you click on the video, make sure you're under Video, Basic, and scroll down to where it says Canvas, you can actually change this, allowing you to convert this 4x3 video to 16:9, like what many television stations and programs end up doing, where they will actually blur out, they will expand and scale up the video in the background and then blur it out. So it's not technically 16:9, and depending on who you ask, some people may like that look better than just having regular old black bars on either side. And seems like there's plenty of shortcuts in here. I haven't really used any of them except for just the back and forward arrows on the keyboard for skipping through. And of course, like a normal video editor, you can just press the space bar and that will play and pause a video. Also a couple of different settings, such as where to save projects to, the frame rate adjustment, time code adjustment, how you want it to display, different performance settings, and this even supports proxies, which I'm actually quite impressed by, which in theory would mean that I probably should be able to edit 4K video from my iPhone on here. There's no way in hell this computer can keep up with editing 4K without proxies, so it's nice to see that. Okay, is this going to work? This is one of the problems that I've encountered using this software so far. Oh, it actually just crashed on us. That's fantastic. I've never gotten it to do that before. It usually would just lock up and eventually catch itself and regain its composure and then start working, but I guess it's not having a good day today. Alright, let's try that again. I actually noticed that there is a level meter here that would give you indication of what your audio levels are. And actually clicking that thing will bring up the level meter over here, and you'll get proper, wow, that's pretty laggy playback. This is where this little menu comes in over here, because you could do quality or performance. And then you can also export a still frame and do color oscilloscopes. And then there's, you could go to full screen playback. You can also adjust the aspect ratio of the project. You do 4:3. Very surprised to see that. I was not expecting to see the option for a 4:3 aspect ratio project on a video editor that comes from the likes of the people who gave us TikTok. And of course, because of that, there's also different ways to do different aspect ratios suited for those kinds of videos. Also zoom into the video. Also some settings over here. If I click any of these videos here, what I could do is I could split it, of course, delete it, do a freeze frame. That'll actually take a still photo. If I zoom in using control and the mouse wheel, and again, this computer is not having it. That's why I usually don't do screen captures, because it just sets an old computer over the edge, especially when you're doing something like this. You could also do, you could reverse the video, mirror it, you could rotate it or crop it. The only thing I found that I kind of disagree with about this software, and I really wish that this would be changed, is that the frame rate is actually locked to these rounded up versions of what they should be. For example, anybody that's ever worked with 24p footage knows that the frame rate is exactly 23.976 frames per second. Likewise, 30 FPS is actually 29.97, and 60 is 59.94. And I thought at first that maybe they were just simplifying things in the menu and it'll actually export at the correct frame rate. That's not the case. If I click this blue button that says export, you see right here, it's only giving us an option for 30 frames per second. Not 29.97, not 59.94, and certainly not 23.976. Over here, you probably might have noticed that there's this little thumbnail. This is what they give you to create thumbnails for your videos for YouTube or elsewhere. I've actually created one. You just click that to create one. And normally, if you don't have one created, it'll actually give you a little thing to skim through your project and select a still frame. And then once you do that, you could use any of these presets, click on them, and then modify your text. And you just can click it, change it how you want, do a background, change the stroke, add a shadow, color, font, whatever, and use their templates or just start off with a basic text. Wow, this computer is struggling mightily. And you could also just do regular old basic text without using their templates, and there's some effects to choose from there as well. Going back to the export setting and pretty much winding up at the end of this video, you could put the title of your video in, the location of where you want to export it to. You notice it has their thumbnail now. And if you actually come over here to where it says cover, it gives you two different options, and I was confused by this. One says without cover, one says with cover. Basically, if you do without cover, it'll still export this thumbnail as a separate JPEG image in the folder it creates for your project when you export it. But once all is said and done, you'll get your video file and your thumbnail in the same folder. I have some extras here because I was working on them with third-party software. But if you do with cover, that'll still export the image file thumbnail, but it'll also take the cover photo and put it at the very beginning of your video and play it for like a split second, and it'll now be a part of your video. I don't know what purpose that is or what it would serve. I just leave it without cover, and it still exports the actual thumbnail image, which is the resolution of your project, in my case 1080p, so that's more than adequate. And then you could change the settings here. You could do 480, 720, 1080, 2K, 4K, no way to input custom resolutions. Bit rates, low, recommended, or higher. So this is kind of like what you get with iMovie, where it'll simplify things enough to where you can get really good quality, but not know the ins and outs of bit rates and different things like that. However, if you want, you can click Customized and do either a constant or variable bit rate, which I was rather surprised to see. For the codec, there's H.264 and HEVC. And here again is that issue with the frame rates, so I'm just stuck exporting at 30 FPS, not 29.97. It also just export the timeline as regular old audio, either MP3, WAV, or AAC. It'll tell you the duration and an estimated size, just like an iMovie or Final Cut Pro. Click Export. So here's the exported video. Taking a look at it in Media Info, and you can see it is locked at 30 frames per second. So that's the only gripe I have with this software. So if the makers of CapCut are watching this, please add in the ability to use standard NTSC frame rates and not these rounded up non-standard frame rates. Audio looks like it's encoded with a variable bit rate with a max of 320 kilobits per second, and it's AAC low complexity, which is recommended for the best quality with the smallest file sizes, and you don't even need the highest bit rate to accomplish that kind of quality. And it does downsample the audio to 44.1 kilohertz, which is CD standard audio, not DVD standard, which is what all camcorders record in. But if you're uploading to YouTube, TikTok, it really isn't going to make much of a difference. That's going to conclude with this informal, honest video review of CapCut. However, if there's one thing I would change, it's that inability to use standard NTSC video frame rates. But everything else about it seems to be working actually pretty well for my needs and gives you a lot of advanced level features without a massive learning curve, like multiple layers, multiple video tracks and overlay tracks, text effects, presets, transitions. So I'm actually rather surprised that all of this is available in a totally free piece of software.